start actually in just a moment. So if you need the materials, please go to the link on the chat as well as on my screen. Without further ado, let's start. So welcome to this workshop. It's introductory to Python. And I'm here, my name is Juliana, together with my team members, Thomas and Geraldine, and we are from LCCL Coding Academy. I'll just take this time to quickly introduce us before we get to the workshop proper. So here is our mission at LCCL. We want to educate all for the future. And by all, we mean we want to include everyone regardless of background and age. We run classes for children at our academy. Also for older group, teens and young adults. And we also work with partners, secondary schools, primary schools, preschools, as well as community and organizations. So thanks for listening to that. Let's get started. So in the shared folder materials, you should be able to see the these slides, this set of slides, as well as the Google Colab notebook. Now I'm going to be shuffling between the notebook and this slide. So I hope that you can find time to follow along and understand the material. So let's get started. What does a program, oh, actually, before we get started, right, let's do a little poll. All right, let's have the poll up. Okay, great. Thanks for all your answers. I think this is it's quite a good representation, I think, already. Okay, so here are the results. You can have a look. So let's see, about 41% are total beginners, and actually quite a number as well who already know how to program. So that's great. If you have any questions, just put it in the Q&A, and I will do my best to cater to both of these groups. All right, so for those who are new, let's have just a very quick overview on what a program does. So a program is actually a bunch of a sequence of instructions, the one in the middle, and it will take data as an input, and then it will output data as well. So your data is going to come through a few streams. I mean, it could be, for example, hard-coded into your program, or it could come from, let's say, a terminal or command line interface or CLI. Your data could also come from files, sensors, databases, API calls as well. Now then it will go in through your program, and then it's processed, and then you will output it, and same thing, you would stream it in so many ways. You could just print it out to terminal, which is what we will do a lot in this workshop, or you could print it out to files and etc. So with that kind of overview in mind, let's get started with Python. Okay, so I have the notebook on here. I hope you have too. And we are going to start with segment 1 here, these 5 areas before we go to a short break. Okay, so to print in Python, you just use the print function basically, right? And then whatever you want to print, you just put it in here. So for those of you who are not new to coding, you know that this is a string. So to those who are new, this is how you run the code. You just click this button, and then the code is run, and you will see the results over here. So the first line prints hello world, second line 88. Right, now, because you're working on this Google Colab notebook. Without typing print, you can also evaluate the results that appear. So this expression 99 times 8 plus 56 to the power of 8 is evaluated, and when you run it, you will see the results here. Okay, so that's a little bit about printing. I will cover more about printing as we work with the hands-on. But let's now move on to some concepts about data types. Now, as you can see here, there are 6 print statements, but the content, or rather the argument into the print function has a different data type. Over here, there's hello world, and the second line is also hello world, but let me just change. The difference is actually, okay, second line is also hello world, but the difference is that you could use in Python a string data type could be you could use two double quotation marks or a single quotation mark. But if you use a single one, you have to end it with a single one. Use a double one, you got to end it with a double quotation mark. So to those who are new, you could think of strings as text, all right? Or you could think of it as a string of characters. And these characters could be numbers or symbols or letters. So that's a string. Now then, there's also a data type that's called an integer. And then there's also a data type that we call a float. And these are decimal point numbers. There is another data type that's very common. Okay, this is Boolean, and Boolean has only 2 values, which is true or false. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and you will see 6 lines and just print it like that. All right, now you can inspect the type of data by using the type function. So type of whatever that's inside this is going to return you the data type. So as you can see here, the first line here, type hello world, is string. Then you have the type 100, that's integer, and so on and so forth. So the print here is just a function that prints out the result, right? Because if I don't print out, so as an example, if I don't print out and I run this, you won't see the result for hello world, right? Only the last 4, which is printed. All right, now I want to address some Q&A over here. Some of you say you can't open that page on a drive. Now, let us check internally at the moment, okay, for now. And I do hope that this is actually a meeting, so I could ask, who actually is able to open it. Okay, but let us check internally for a while. Meanwhile, I hope that as we check on our side, that you would follow on, because I would hate that it takes too much time from this workshop. Okay, so my team has confirmed that it can't be accessed at the moment. So let us check how to make it available to you guys. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being patient about that. Okay, let's see. Now, the last time we checked, all right, for the Google Colab file, you should be able to do, firstly, you can open it, and then you could say save as your save to your own drive, and then or save a copy to your own drive, and you should be able to open it. But since there's quite a lot of or since there's quite a number of feedback to say you can't, so let us check on our end first. Okay. Now, for those of you who have worked with Jupyter Notebook before, you can just download the notebook, open it with that. Otherwise, there is a question here. Is there any recommended programs or IDE for Python? Well, there are a few out there. Visual Studio Code is what we like. You could check out the rest too. Okay, I'm gonna carry on as my team check how to share that notebook file in other ways to you. All right, so we stopped here at data type. I'm gonna go to casting it. So here 100 is an integer, and you want to cast it to a string. You would say you would write it this way, str, and then put that value, the integer value, as the argument. So if I inspect the tag now, right, of the result of this, and I print that out, oh, I was missing a closing bracket. Okay, so now I see a string. Okay, then one thing that I'll share over here is that you could inspect the length of the string this way. So by using the length function, put that string in, and then when you run it, you'll see the length of the string. All right, so that's a little bit about the more common data types we'll be using tonight. Now, here's a concept of an operators. So operators, there are two kinds of operators. There's arithmetic operators, which obviously work on numbers. So for example, there's plus, division, and then multiplication. So when I have this expression, this is what's evaluated. So with regards to operators, here are all the arithmetic operators available to you. As usual, addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc., etc. So you have division and integer division as well. And the difference is that if you do a division, you will get the floating point value, right? Like 7 divided by 2, you get 3.5. But if you say 7 and slash 2, which is integer division, then you'll get 3 instead of 3.5. So basically, this results in the quotient. If you remember last time you do like long division, you have a quotient. And then this is the operator for getting a remainder. You can do a test here. So let's say, okay, so I want to add a new one. Here the code. So 7 divided by 2. That's that. Okay, and then 7 integer division 2, and that's that. Okay, so at this moment, I'd like to give you some time to just test it out. Okay, I'll put the arithmetic operators here, and you test it out on your screen how you can do it. Okay, hope you have some time to do that. And at the same time, I realized I have not shared a video, so I'm just going to share it. Okay. All right, let's see. So that's arithmetic operators. Now, related to arithmetic operators is the precedence of the operator. over here, you see that exponentiation has a higher precedence. Basically, it's just the same as the math that we do all this while, right? So if you type like, let me just do an example here, like 7 plus 6 divided by 2, division will have higher precedence, and so it's evaluated first. So basically, that's what it means. All right, so it's a 7 plus 3 instead of this first. So the higher the precedence, the earlier it will be evaluated first in the expression. So this is the precedence order. So exponentiation has higher, and then addition subtraction has the lower. All right. Then the other thing about operators is that there is also the string operators over here. So string operators, there is this plus, which is concatenation. So string plus another string, that's going to add these two together. And then there is multiplication. So you can like string times a number, and then it will replicate it 3 times. So I'll run here so you see an example. So black plus 1, that's black's 1. And then you're like very times 3. So you get 3 times of that. Then plus very black's 1. So that's the result that you have. Okay, at this moment, I'll just stop and see if there's any questions I can answer. I see session is recorded. Is the recording available for participants? Yes, so recording is available, and we will make it available to you, and we will share with you how you can get it after that. To Alfredo's question, if you want to declare string variable in Python, you don't need to reserve array. Yes, you don't have to. You don't have to do that. That's in C. Okay, when do you use unary? Unary just refers to when you want to like negate something, right? So for example, like plus -6, right? 7 plus -6. So that's what it means by unary operator. It works on just one operator. Okay, so occasionally I'll look at the Q&A and I'll answer it there. Otherwise, I'll continue here. If I haven't gotten to your question, just give me some time. I'll answer it nearer before the hands-on or during the break. Okay, so far we have covered three concepts, simple ones, printing, data type, and then operators. And you saw that operators, there's arithmetic operators, there's also string operators. And then there is this concept of precedence when it comes to operators. Now, input. So far we've been printing. So how can we get input from the terminal? You know what? I'll just take off the mask. I'm in an enclosed space in the office, so no worries about that. Okay, so first line I print, second line is input. I'm getting an input. Third line I print again. So let's see what happens here. So when I run it, here I'm able to get an input. So I'll just type something like maybe Bob, enter, and then the next line runs. So as you can see, what happens is that when you have input, the input code here, execution is going to hold until you have entered an input and then enter it. Okay. Concept of variables. Now you can think of a variable as a little storage in memory that has a label to it. So this first line of code, simple, just print. Second line of code, what we do is this time we get input, and this is the same as earlier, as you can see. But now what we do is that once we get that input, we are going to store that data into a variable called name. So there is a memory space that we have labeled name, and then we are going to store that data in that. So why do we do this? We do that because later on, we are able to access that data again, right? So here we print good to see you and concatenate it with that piece of data we stored. Okay. So here are some, oh, by the way, I think, so I just want to mention here that you will see code that has this hash in front. This means that this is a comment totally ignored by the Python interpreter. So this is meant for human, it's meant for human eyes, basically. So here are some notes, a little bit of notes on variables for you. It says variable names can comprise of certain characters. Okay, so for example, here you have a variable that stores a string. You have another variable that stores an integer. Then you have this float. What you can do with the variable is that you can write expressions like this. So for those who are new to programming, what happens when you see this expression is that the right side of this equals symbol is being evaluated. So pages right now is a variable that is assigned this number, 1,200. So when the interpreter sees it, it goes, okay, this is 1,200. So 1,200 plus 20, that's 1,220. And then that 1,220, that value is being assigned back into the variable. So pages is being overwritten by this new value. So let me demonstrate what I mean here. I'm going to print pages just before and print pages just after. Okay, so I run it. And as you can see, these 3 lines, it just, these are just, you don't see any output from this, right? You see output just from these 2 printing print statements. So what happens here is that when you print pages here, whatever value that's in pages at that moment is being printed. So that's why you see 1,200 or 1,200. And then after that, what we did here on this line is that we have done a certain addition here, and then we assigned it to the same variable again, so that now when we print that variable, it shows the new value. So that's what's happened. So the moral of this story is that this equal symbol is not like math. The equal symbols in Python is an assignment operator. So it assigns whatever that's on the right to the variable on the left. Okay, so we have learned about 5 concepts. It's not too many, but then that's enough for us to do a very, at least get you started with a hands-on. Okay, so here's hands-on number 1. So by the nature of its name, hands-on is for you to have that hands-on, right? So I hope you take some time to work it out. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Okay, one thing I'd like to mention is that all the result of an input function are all strings. So input function will just return you a string. All right, let's discuss the approach to hands-on one. Now, there are a few answers, a few Q questions here that I'd like to answer. About the unary operator. So when we talk about operators, we call this a binary operator. Like plus is a binary operator. Why? Because it takes by, right? Bi. So it takes two operands. So 7 plus 4. Unary operator means there's only one operand. So I mean, -9, right? That just makes this number 9 a negative. Basically, that's just what it means. So when you have plus, actually, it makes no difference to this number 9. So that's what unary operator means. So you could go, so here you could have an expression 9 plus 9 times 8. And I can say, okay, this whole expression, I want to have a unary operator working on it, which is the unary operator is this minus. Okay. So that's, I hope it makes clear what a unary operator is. Some of you, when you click this button, you see that it takes a long time to run. That could happen the first time you use Google Colab, because Google has to allocate the resource to you, so it will take a little bit of time. Okay, so let's have a look at the hands-on number 1. Now, to make it a bit faster, so that we can progress a bit faster, I've already put the code over here. So let's see how this is done. So first I put input, I got input, right? And then I have this string here. Now that input value that I get, I'm going to cast it to a floating point. And then I keep that value in a variable called principal. So similarly, I've done the same for interest. And all that I do so far is that, okay, so far I have these two values. And then what I do with interest is that I convert it into this number at, like 1 point something. So later on, when I multiply it to the principal, I will get the resulting principal plus interest. Okay, so this is a little bit more about print that I like to explain. So I'm going to just copy this out and I'll explain it here. So normally I could just do this. I could say, okay, let me do this. So I could just do this, which is based on what we have at least covered in the workshop so far. So I've got a string, and then I attempt to concatenate it to this result. But we know that this result is a floating point value. So these are incompatible data types. So you remember we covered operators just now. We don't have an operator that an operator plus that works on string and a numeric data type. So we have to convert this into or cast this into a string. So that's one way we could do it. If I run it, you'll see, right? So 100, 7%, and then that's our result. But there's a very nice printing like method that we can use that uses string formatting. So string formatting or a formatted string goes like this. So this is a normal string. I'm going to make it into a formatted string by having an F here. And then I have the what I like to call a placeholder over here. So this curly brackets. And then I just place the result that I want here. So times interest. Okay. So if we do that, 1%. Okay, so this is what we get. So one nifty thing about this is that I don't have to cast this into anything else, right? So it's able to grab that value and convert it behind the scenes into a string. Okay, so the other nifty thing about this is that because it's a formatted string, we can format the result. So in order to format this value, we first put a colon, and then we say, okay, this is the floating point value. So there's F, and then we want it to be in 2 decimal place. So this is the way you write it. So 2, there's a point, and then there's 2 over here. So once you do that, so 5%, now you have it at 2 decimal places. So then how do you get, like, for the second year, right? It's just simply math. It's just writing it out in code, that's all. So once you have that, this is the result. All right, so I hope that is clear. Here is the second hands-on. And again, about 5 minutes. All right, I hope you had some time to test this out. Let's see how we could do it. Okay, hands-on two is that you pretend that you are writing a subprogram that's gonna that's gonna tell you like how many coins you need to dispense, and the condition is that you want to dispense as few coins as possible, right? So here goes. Okay, so firstly, the way I'd approach it is that I will have a bunch of variables that's going to keep like the number of 1 cent in a certain denomination, right? So the number of 1 cent in a dollar, I think. Yeah, in $10. So number of 1 cent in $10 is this, and so on and so forth. Now, there was a question earlier about whether Python has a constant. So as you can see so far, for those of you who have had some experience in maybe some strongly typed languages, Python is dynamically typed. So there's no need to declare any kind of data type. And you also don't declare a constant. So Python does not enforce constants, but you can, by convention, you would name constants in capital letters, so that everybody knows that this is supposed to be a constant, even though Python does not enforce it. Now, to be clear, a constant versus a variable is a piece of data that you expect to change throughout the program execution. So for example, this variable change, right, at first is the original value, and then it changes throughout during my execution. Whereas a constant, you don't expect it to change throughout the program. That's why we call it a constant. So anyway, for those who are new, you can just think of these as variables that don't change. Okay, so let's move on to the program. So first I get an input, which is the change that we are supposed to give, right? So let's say change is supposed to be 640. We get an input here, turn it into a floating point value, and float type, and then keep it into the variable change. So now the next thing I've done here is that I've changed this value, like 6.4, so $6.40 to cents itself. So that would mean that we do a little math here, times 100, and then that value, assign it back to the variable. Okay, so now I want to count the number of $10, right, in this amount. So just do a little bit of math, just do an integer division, and that would give me the number of $10. So now that I got that, I mean, in this case, if it's $6.40, that's 0. So I got that. I'm going to get the remainder of that. So then I use this operator, right? Remainder operator. So cents a remainder of this, which is cents in $10. So the cents remainder 1,000. That's going to get me the remainder cents, right? After we've taken off all the number of $10. So we do this repeatedly. It's just simple math, actually. Just do this repeatedly, and then we get what we want. So our result is in tens, which is the number of $10 bills, number of $5 bills, $2 bills, so on and so on. And then over here, we just output the result. That's it. Okay, so at this point, what we'll do is we'll take a very short break, as well as to give you some time to firstly to check in on you to see how you're at right now. So let's bring on the second poll, and also to give you some time to ask any questions if you have any. And you can also just go ahead and take a break already. We will commence in about 4 minutes. Okay, hope you had a good break. As you can see, the poll result is out. About 5% find it too easy. And then we have the rest finding it just about right and or hard. So like I said, I'll do my best to cater to most of the group. And I want to answer a question here before I get on to the second part. Okay, so let me just have some code here. If you want to print something like this, right? So let's say age is, and you want to do like 23. You will get an error here because you're trying to concatenate string and a numeric data type. So to prevent this, you either have to change both to the same data type, right? Or at least compatible data type so that you can do this. So in this case, you actually want this 23 to be a string, so you cast it. Now, normally it won't be like this. Normally you have it as a variable, right? Age 23. So that's one way. Okay, another way is that you can use the formatted string that I shared with you, and that's my preferred way to go. Right, so age is age, like that, then you're fine. Another way to do it is that you can use the print function this way. Say age is called by age. So this is an alternative. But since I find that this is so powerful, I think that's enough to go on actually. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, John. All right, so let's move on to conditional statements. Now, so far, our program has run very linearly, and sometimes in our program, usually in life, you gotta make decisions. So conditional selectors branch out according to certain conditions. So for example, here, we are sorting age, okay, and we want to have different output depending on how much that age is. So now we have an if statement here to check for certain conditions. So the way we write it is if and then your condition. Okay, so now this expression after if will evaluate to a Boolean value. So true or false. So age. So if age less than 11, so this will either be true or false. Now, if this part is true, then the code block inside the if, which is indented as you can see, is going to run. So if age less than 11, then you are a child. Now, if this part is false. So okay, let me do this. Okay, so with such a code, we can already run it. So let's say age is 7, then it says you are a child because this part is true. Now let me run it again with another value, let's say 20. And this time you could expect that this is going to be true. So this is not printed, and then code execution goes to the next line, which is this. So it prints thanks for answering the question. So let's say now you want to cater to more ages, right? You want to check for more ages, and what you can do is to write an else if statement, which is else if. So let me just do this. Okay, so age is 7. You know what will happen, right? So this will be true, and then this will be printed, and then at the end this is printed no matter what. Now, if age is 14, then this part, again, code execution runs from the top, right? Goes here. This is false. And so because this is false, it goes to elif, and then it checks the condition there. So in this case, this part is true. And then it instead prints you are a teenager, and then continues as usual. So we can have a few elifs together. Of course, elif, because it's else if, then it only makes sense after an if, right? So if age less than 11, or else if your age is less than 18, and then if not, else if your age is less than 21, and then finally an else you're actually an adult, right? So these are else is printed when all of the other conditions in the elifs and if before it are false. So let's run an example here. So let's say you are 20. Okay, so this evaluated to true, and then it prints this. Let's run it again. Let's say we are 88. So everything else here evaluates to false, so it goes into else. Then you are in no doubt. Now, it doesn't mean that you need an elif. Sometimes you just need an if else. And this just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to leave the output like that. Okay. So long in this program, so long as your age is not less than 11. So 11 is not less than 11, right? So then it goes to else, and you're an adult. So that's if, elif, and else. And so related to that would be all these comparison operators. So here are all the comparison operators. All right, this is to check for equality, not equal, right? Greater than, less than, which you've seen. And then when you have greater than equals to and less than equals to, that's written this way. All right. Let's test another thing. So now we get a name, and name is a string. Now you know that input returns you a string. Okay, so now on this second line, I've done something with the string. I've used a method of a string, and we will cover more about strings in the next workshop, the Python basic data, basic data types, or basic data structures, the next workshop. But here, just know that string has got a method, and like this is a string, and put a dot lower on it, it's going to create a copy of that string in lowercase. So I keep that back in this variable. And then what we do next is that we compare whether name is Alice or name is Mad Hatter. So in this case, notice that we use the comparison operator, right? So at the same time, we also have the Boolean operator. So we have two expressions here to the right and left of the OR operator. And the OR operator works this way, that as long as one of them, as long as one of the operands is true, then this whole statement is true. So if name is Alice or name is Mad Hatter, then we are going to print welcome to Wonderland. Okay. If they're both, if this is false, which both need to be false for this to be false, then again, execution goes to the next line, elif, like what we have seen earlier. And then we check, hey, is our name Harry Potter? If it is, then print that. Then else, if it's not, then go to else. So I hope that makes sense. Here is the logical operator. Just now you saw or, not or, as an example. There's also another operator called and then there's another operator called not. Now, not is the most straightforward, right? If you have an expression and you put not in front of it, it's just going to just give you the opposite of it. So if you put like not name, not name is Alice, then if your name is actually Alice, it's going to give you the. So let's just do it here. Okay, okay, you wouldn't write it this way, but I'm just gonna write this. If name equals to Alice. So it's gonna show you an example, but you won't write it this way actually. If name is Alice, if name is not Alice, name is not Alice. Stop. So the name is not Alice. Now actually you won't write it this way. It's not really a good way to write it. It was just to show you how you could like put a not and then you check for the inverse. You will write it this way because this is like not equal. Okay. Now, this explanation is mainly for those who are new, right? And I think it will be clearer once we have more, once you do more exercise, then it'll be clearer to you. So n goes like this. If you have two expressions to the left and right, both of them are true, then n is true, else they're false. For the OR operator, it is true as long as one of them is true, or at least one of them is true, right? So it's only false when both of them are false. Okay, so it's time for hands-on 3. Take about like 5 minutes for this. And like most programming languages, Python is case sensitive. So in my earlier example, where we check for name is Alice. So let me just go there here. So if you have, let me just have a new block here. Right. So if we say, actually, let's just Alice and then compare, is it same as lowercase Alice? And this is going to be false because it's case sensitive. Okay, which is why our solution, or at least in our example here, we purposely convert it to lowercase before we compare with this. It's just a little note. So here's hands-on tree again. All right, let's discuss. Okay, I'd like to discuss this instead of going through the code like top to bottom. I like to discuss it in the way that I think about it. So the way I would think about it is actually let me do this. Is first I'll get all the related data, right? The data that I have, the data that I know I'll be using. So I have here the limits. So we have all the limits, the talk time limits, SMS limits, data limits, and then I know the charges. So I know the base charge over here, the extras for calls, SMS, and data, and then the tax rate. Then what I'll do next is that I'll just get the input, right? So, so you can, so just input over here. And then what I'll do actually, I'll just cut this out here so you can see the reasoning. What I'll do is that instead, I'll immediately write something like this, right? So, okay, subtotal. How do I get a subtotal? Okay, that will be the base charge plus any additional call, SMS, or data charges. So once I get this subtotal, then I'm going to add the tax on top of it. No, that actually I'm going to calculate the tax. So once I have these values, then I'm going to output. Okay, let's talk about the processing first before the output. So we know that base is already there. So we know that we're going to have to calculate the additional call, SMS, or data. So I'm calculating them over here. But I know that before I calculate the charges, the additional charge for call, I'll have to know how many minutes of extra call minutes I have. And similarly, how many extra SMSs and extra data. So the top here is just the calculation for that, right? So I'm calculating if call is more than the limit, then I'll just calculate the extra. Similarly for SMS, calculate the extra. And then for data, I'm calculating the extra as well. The difference is that now I'm getting the ceiling. Okay, so for example, let's see here. The limit, the data limit is 5. And the cost, if you see here, the cost is 1 additional gig is like 1070, right? But you know that if you consume like 1.2 gigs, you are probably charged 2 gig. So that is why we have this here. So yeah, if I consume 1.2 gig extra, it's going to be calculated as 2 gig in this case. Okay, so there's no prorated amount. Now, so let me run that actually. I will need this seal function. So it's from math module, but let me run that. So talk time minutes, let's say it is, let's say 50. 50 again, 50 SMS. And in terms of data, let me put 7.4. So I have an error here. Now that's because seal is not defined. Actually, what I want is a seal, SEIL. And this is a function from the math module. Okay, so here, let me take this opportunity to introduce how can we import a module into a Python program. So you would write it this way, you could write it this way, import module name. So this is the module name, just an import statement. And if I write it that way, I need to have the module name here, math.seal. Then this would work. Otherwise, I could do this. I could say from math, import the function that I want. So in this case, it's seal. And then in this case, I can just refer to seal on its own. I don't need that module name dot. Okay, so run that again. And there should not be any error again. That's 50 and then 7.4, 7.4. Okay, so there's no more output because I've taken away the printing part. I'm just checking whether it's all okay over here. Okay, so this is all fine now. I'm now going to proceed to print the bill. Now I will run this with some examples so you can see the output as well as the code. So let me do this. Talk time minutes. Let me put some extra. Actually, let's not have extra. It's within limit. Then 65. Then let's say 8.8. Okay. So now this line is just, so this is a string, and the string has a method called center. Now earlier you saw another method called lower, and this is just another method, and I'm centralizing it by 30 characters. So from here up to here is 30 characters. So bill is at the center. Then what I do is I print 30 of this equals character, right? That's just this aesthetics effect. Okay. Now then what we do, this is a demonstration of one thing nice about the string formatting, is that we can format base charges, right? I want to print this, and I want it to be printed over like 21 characters. So I'm going to put this away so that you just focus on this part. Okay, so here is firstly here is a string. Okay, let me just take this away so you can see easier. So here's a normal string, a formatted. We said we're going to start with a formatted string, right? So then we have curly brackets, and then we're going to have our value. So the value earlier on in the earlier example, you saw that value is in a variable, but nothing stops us from putting a string literal, right? So literally there's this base charge. Now notice that I use, instead of a double quotation mark, I'm using single quotation mark now. So that's so that the interpreter is not confused, right? If I put double quotation mark, you may think that the string has stopped here. So I'm using single quotation mark to just differentiate between the outer one. Okay, so now I say that this is a string, and I want it to fill 21 characters. And by default, when I do this, it's going to, you see, put base charge to the left, and then fill the rest of the remaining characters with spaces. So then what I do next is I have this colon, and then what we want next is space. As you can see here, there's a space, and then there's $sign. So I put that in, space and $sign. And then another so-called placeholder. And this time, this whole thing is going to fill 6 spaces. Right? If you actually calculate it, or 6 characters, if you calculate it. So I'll put it in first, like 6. And I know that it's going to be a float, so F. So where does this value come from? Right, this was the base charge. So our base charge was base, just like that. Okay, so this is what this means. And similarly, if you read carefully, this is also what this means, and the rest of the formatted string. Okay, so you can take your time to look at it slowly after the workshop, because I'll be sharing this this notebook with the this example code here after the workshop. The rest of the printing is just straightforward. You're just printing like 30 times of this dashes and so on and so forth. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's move on to the next concept. Okay, so I'm just going to take a look here. I like to print using, yeah. Okay, so there's a question here about printing. So this person is asking about this 3 quotation marks. So when you have a string, I do like friend. Okay, this is string. If you want it to be multiple lines, you can put 3 quotation marks, and it could be 3 double quotation marks or 3 single quotation marks. It's okay. And the string formatting that you learned, it can work with multi-line strings as well. So that's fine. right? Just use it the same way as you would like over here. So you'll just have this whole print, right? And then you just go on. So print and close it, and then you just put everything in. Base charge, that way. Additional charges, that way, and so on and so on. Then you'll work the same. Let's run it. See? Okay, so 6F. Oh, so let's constrain it to 2 decimal place. Okay, so you do that, and then you're gonna get the whole bill using this way. So I hope that answers the question, Anonymous. Okay. All right, so let's go on to loops. So if you want to loop n number of times, so in this example, 10 times, this is how you write it for I in range. So this is a function. So and then this 10. So this is going to loop 10 times. Now this range function, you can use it to, I mean, in a way, think of it as controlling how many steps. Okay, so okay, let me run it so you can see it. So in the first loop, print this 10 times. Second loop, you get to inspect the value of I. Okay, so let me do this without, let me put another loop here for I in range 10 again. Print I. Okay, so you can see that this one, this is the value of I. So there are 10 values, and it increases from 0 up until, but not including this number in here. So what happens now if I say, okay, I don't want to start from 0, I want to start from 3. So you go to this. So now you get 3 up to, but not including 10. So you get 9. You can then have a third argument, which is this number, which is the stats. So now you get 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay. All right. So that's the for loop. In actual fact, this for loop runs over a sequence, right? So this range function behind the scenes actually returns you a sequence, and then R just iterates through that sequence. So I'm going to skip a little bit the while loop here. You just look over here. So now you have string as the sequence. So now if you do for something in that sequence, then you'll print each item of that sequence. In this case, it is these letters A, P, P, L, E, S. Okay. Now, for those who are new, you notice also that for this, whereas here is for I in range, here is like for char, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I or char, you can think of this as a variable, or you can rename them in whatever way you want. Okay, now for loops. So a for loop, a while loop. Now, while loop looks like this. You have this while keyword, and then you have a certain condition after that. So while this condition is true, every code inside this block will run until this condition here is false. So that's basically it. Okay, so let's test this while loop. First, I'm going to input password. So let's say password is Python. And then you can imagine when I enter this, code execution goes here, and it checks, is this true? And it is true because Python is not equals to this string over here. So it will go into the loop. And so it goes in the loop, this gets printed, invalid password. Then I gotta enter password again because of this line of code, this line here. So I can keep on entering. So love, right? Then again, code execution goes back up. So it's love equals, I mean, if is this part true? Yes, it's true because love is not equals this. So then it goes in the loop again, and so on and so forth. So let's do another example. And then when I finally type this, and remember it is case sensitive, so I have to type the whole thing with the correct casing. Then when finally this is false, that is false because I love Python is not not equals this, right? So then false gets out of the loop and then prints this part, print welcome. All right, now related to loops is these two things. One is a break statement, the other one is continue statement. So break statement goes like this. As soon as code execution, so in a loop, code execution runs like it loops, right? Runs again and again. And as soon as the code execution gets to this keyword break, it breaks out of the loop and it breaks out of the inner, the loop that it is in. So if there is an outer loop, the outer loop stays running. Okay. Now in this particular example, you see there's this while and then true here. So the existence of this word true here, it just says that this condition is true. So forever it's going to loop, and you end up in an infinite loop if you don't break it. So here we break out of the loop if password is this. So this is actually an alternative to write the while loop at the top. Okay, then there is this continue statement. For those of you who may have experience in other languages, there's just not much of a difference. It's the same actually. So continue goes like this. Instead of breaking out of the loop, you are going to, as soon as code execution sees continue, it goes to the top of the loop and then continue as usual. Okay, so example, let me run this. Well, for I in range 5, if I were to just print I without doing anything else, it'll print 0 up until 4, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But now we have this statement here that says, if now I is 2, then we continue. So imagine now you run, I is 0. Okay, this is false, so I print. It goes up, I is 1. This is false, we print. Go back up, I is 2. This is true. This is true. So continue. So I don't print. I go back up, and then I is now 3. Let me check, is this true or is it false? So I print 3, and then subsequently print 4. So this is what has happened. Okay, so that's loops. All right. Here you go. Hands-on 4 on loops. Now, let's do our best to do this as fast as possible, right? So because I want to make sure I could cover everything within this time. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes. All right, let's discuss. But before that, I want to mention that you're right. I know some of you point out that the data capping on hands-on tree is not implemented. You're right. I've missed that out in this solution here. And yeah, so if you could add additional code here to say that, okay, if the charges here, additional data has increased more than to more than 188, then we gotta cap it to 188. Okay, so think about how you can do that. Okay, instead of me writing it here. I'd like to answer a few questions before I move on to discuss hands-on 4. There's one question about whether there is a concept of a noun. Yes. So in other languages, you have this noun, like C, C++, Okay, in Python, it's none, the none type, right? Let's see, what else? Then the other question is that, how can we write a ternary operator in Python? Okay, so for those in the know about ternary operators, you can do this. You can say, okay, let's just like, or like just now the data extra data charges, right? So that fee is 190. Okay, so you're gonna say fee. I say fee is already 190. So we're gonna say fee either we say it's 188 if fee is more than 188, or else it remains as fee. Okay. So this is just a different way to write if fee else else nothing actually. Well, in this case, this is not really a good example. But yeah, this is to answer the person, Edison, who is asking about ternary operator. So here's an example. Now, of course, here doesn't have to be fee, right? In your case, you could have some other things. Okay. Oh, what is ternary? So you have your binary operator, and then you have your operator that has 3 operands. So here you can see like 1, 2, 3 operands, right? Now, if you want to search for more information online, because of the time limit here, I would rather you search for more information online. The term is ternary, so ternary operator. Put it here. Okay, so hands-on number 4. Create a program that reads a number until it reaches a blank input. Then you output average. All right, so first we get a number input, right? Then we have 2 variables here. One is count, the other one is total. And here is an example. So instead of you writing count equals 0, and then instead of you writing this and total this, that in Python, you could write it this way. So now, while n is not this empty blank input, right, empty string, then we are going to do this. So this is actually, for the beginners especially, for beginners, this is short form, right? This is short form for total. Being assigned total plus float n. Okay, so similarly here, this is count plus 1. So this is a short form for this, basically. Okay, so let's see what we are doing here. We are just adding in the whatever number you put to total, and then you increase count by 1. And then you get input again. And so then code execution goes back up to the top of the loop, and then you check, hey, is this input a blank line? If it's not, then continue, right? So continue adding to the total an incrementing count. So you do that until finally your input is a blank line. And then we check, hey, if count is 0, then we want to output, you don't have any input numbers. So if count is non-zero, then we are able to calculate the average. So that's what we do on this line. Okay, so that's the loop. Now let's move on to the final concept we cover for tonight, which is the concept of functions. Okay, so you can think of a function as like grouping up a code snippet. So for example, the code snippet here is a for loop, right? I mean, you've seen it for I in range at 1 to 8, and then you're doing something like that. You're taking this, a string, star inside, and then it times it by I. So you know that I goes from 0 up until, in this case, I goes from 1, right, up until but not including 8. So you print a few lines of this. So you could encapsulate this whole thing in a function, and then all you do is then you need to call a function, call the function. So this is your function definition, right? If you have function definition and you if you just have function definition, if you run this code, nothing is going to happen because you're just defining, okay, there is a function now, and this function does this. So now what you can do is you can call your own function. And now when you call it, you can see that we have printed this. Okay. Now you can define parameters for your function. And you have seen that, like, you have been using functions so far, right? Like type, like print, that's a function. And you realize that this function takes some kind of an input. We call this the parameter. So you can define the parameter here. So when I define it this way, I can enter the height. I mean, in this particular example, I could enter height of this triangle. So what happens is that when we define it this way, right, then we can use the parameter within the body of our function. And later on, when we make a call to our function, we can put a value here. And that value is being received by this parameter here. And then inside the body of the function, wherever that parameter is, will be substituted by this value. So imagine here now I call triangle 3. Now 3 goes in here, 3 goes in here, then 3, then you have like 3 plus 1. So it means this whole thing would be for I in range 1, 4, right? And then you print. So you get a height of 3. There you go. A so-called triangle height of 3. Okay, so far, you see the example so far, we have not purposely returned any data back, right? We just did processing and then we display the output, but we have not returned anything. So here's the return statement, right? That will let us return a piece of data after you after you call the function. So here I define this function to accept 3 pieces of data, and then I just return this, right? A times B times C, which is the volume. Okay, so here goes. So if I call volume 2, 3, 4, now I get a value back. So I could do this. I could say, hey, V now is that, right? And then if I want to, I can print and say volume is V. That's a formatted string. Okay, so that's the return statement. Okay, here's another example of a return statement. So I have like triangle type. So this function is to check what is the name of that triangle. And we can input the lengths of the 3 lengths of the triangle. So triangle type, if we enter 3 lengths, it would tell us whether it is an equilateral triangle, an isosceles, or a scalene, or if it's an invalid triangle, it'll return us invalid. So let's look at how we call it here. So I've called triangle type with these 3 values, and then we print whatever that has been returned to us. Okay, so that's the idea. Now I won't go into explaining the content here because I think if you take a look yourself, you can understand it. What I will mention is the use of min-max built-in function. So in Python, I've already put a link to the chat that goes to the Python standard library documentation. Do take a look at it. I think for many of you who already know programming, that's your API, and just go and have a look at it. And you will see built-in functions, max and min, two of them. And for the new ones, you can just go take a look as well. This document is kind of okay, I think. It may not be the document that you want to read as a total beginner, but it's something you want to have as a reference beside you. Okay, so let's move on to hands-on 5. Here you go. About, I think 1 minute actually should suffice for this. Okay, let's continue here. Okay. So simple, just take just take 4 values, right? The x and y of 2 points, and then just this is just a slap in the distance formula. That's it. Okay, let's move on to hands-on 6. All right, let's discuss this, and hopefully we have some time for answering some of your Q&A over here. Okay, so the function is a bill, and you have two parameters, the kilowatt hours for electricity and your cubic meters for your water. So I have three variables here, together with a tariff, right? Two of them tariffs, and the other one is tax. And just simply math here, right? It just check is so the tariff is a little bit different for water when it is smaller than a certain volume. So this is what we're doing here. And that's where we adjust the water tariff. Oh, actually there's a misspelling. There's going to be an error here. Okay. So adjust the water tariff. If it is less than 40, then I'll just return the result, right? Just a simple math with this. So do a test here, and this is the result that you got. And then you would know by now that if you want to constrain this to 2 decimal place and to print it nicely, you can use the string formatting for that. Okay, so that's the very last hands-on. I'd like to take this opportunity to answer some of the questions here. One is it possible to print something without moving to a new line? Thanks for the question there. So the answer is yes, you can. The print function in Python. So let's see, test. So the reason that when you print, right, A, okay, the reason that A is now below, is on a new line is because by default, the print function appends a new line character at the end, right? So you have new line. So if you want to override this, you can put this in, so end is specify that instead of a new line, you just want it to be an empty string, or maybe you want a space. So now you have test, and then the next time print is called, it's here because you ended over here. Okay. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, can we also have a copy of the Q&A? Well, I don't think there is actually a functionality for that. So I hope that you took your notes meanwhile. And just remember that we have this video recorded, so we will pass it to you. And this is how you can get it. Now, before I show you how you can get it, just a recap, right? This is all that we covered so far. So I hope that you find the session useful. And great job to all you guys who stay up late this time. So I know you come from many, many countries. So thank you. And here, please, before you go, fill out the feedback for Shopee on how you found this workshop. Get the video that we recorded about this session over here. Just click this link or like this. Okay, so I hope you find the session useful. Let's see, if you have the questions, keep them coming and I'll answer it.